Hello everyone and welcome back to another build video. I wanted to just make something fun because I need to use my time wisely during this quarantine. So this video will be going out on Patreon early and then we'll eventually go live on YouTube. Once again, my Patreon and all links to my Twitter, Discord, PayPal are all down below. Greatly appreciated if you check any of the links out. You know, just talk to me. Oh, I'm lonely in this quarantine. But that was my little plug in the beginning. Now let's move on to this build video. So today it's going to be about Mesmer. I don't know if I would say I don't often do Mesmer. I feel like I've done Mesmer a moderate amount of times. However, I was up late last night and I was thinking about certain niche builds that focus on a very specific function and a very specific couple of abilities and effects. So I wanted to make something that was focused on stealth, especially because the Mesmer has very weird interactions with stealth, which I'll get into when we get to the actual specialization. But to begin with, let's first actually go over what gear I'm running. I apologize if you can hear things in the background. It's very hot today, so I have air flowing through. Let's start with the amulet, of course, because this is a PvP build. I have taken it into ranked and it has been decent. It's been fun. And I think fun is a good thing. So I'm taking Sage Amulet, and I am taking, no, not Rune. Wait, am I taking Rune of the Mirage? I guess I'm taking Rune of Mirage. I thought I switched to something else. Anyway, this is what I've been playing with. I totally forgot to change it, but I guess it's working so far. So yes, I'm taking Sage Amulet and Rune of Mirage for extra toughness and Torment as well, which actually isn't that bad for this build. Next, for the weapons, I'm taking Scepter, Torch, and Staff. And for the sigils, Sigil of Doom, Sigil of Energy, and then the Staff, Sigil of Doom, and Sigil of Purging. I wanted Purging for, once again, condition shedding if it ever ends up becoming an issue. It's just there. But of course I would also apply Sigil of Energy because Sigil of Energy is just so damn strong. It really is. So now that we have the equipment out of the way, let's now move on to the specializations and skills. Of course, let's go over the skills first. You know, you have your basic Scepter, Torch, Staff abilities. Key abilities for the build would include the Prestige, or the Prestige, however you want to pronounce the ending of the j. Phantasmal Mage is very important as well as Confusing Images. For the Staff, Chaos Storm will be one of your most focused abilities, I would say. In conjunction with the trait choices that I have, you're definitely going to want to focus and make sure you know when you're using it to hopefully get that interrupt. Additionally, Chaos Armor is nice for some defense and boon uptime. For the utilities, I'm taking Signet of the Ether. Pretty self-explanatory, nice to cool down some of the phantasms a bit. Next, I'm taking Arcane Thievery. Wow, there's of course abilities going off in the background now. Taking Arcane Thievery for the condition transfer and boon steal, Blink for the teleportation and stun break, Signet of Midnight for the stun break as well, but more importantly for the stealth, and blind, and subsequent confusion and expertise. Honestly, Signet of Midnight is a really great signet that I don't often play with. However, I wanted to just try it out with this build, and you know what? It's freaking strong. It's very strong. And then finally, for my elite skill, I've chosen Signet of Humility. I don't really run Signet of Humility a lot, actually. I typically take Time Warp, and if anything, I'm usually in Chronomancer or Mirage, so I take those elite skills. But this is actually very fun in PvP. For someone who has very rarely used Signet of Humility. And of course the passive is really great as well. Next, we're going to be talking about the specializations. And these specialization choices, these trait choices will tie into some of my thoughts behind my utility choices and my skill choices. So first we're going to start with Chaos. Chaos is probably one of the most important trait lines for this build. Method of Madness, it's good to, once again, get that daze, but also great to keep up defensive boons if you happen to stay within the Chaos Storm for long enough. Illusionary Defense could be an option, as well as Master of Manipulation. However, I've just seen myself going with Method of Madness more often. Next up, I'm taking Auspicious Anguish. This will just convert any damaging conditions to boons if I happen to use Distortion, but more importantly, if I happen to be disabled, just to maybe, you know, allow myself to survive a little bit more so I'm not disabled and taking condition damage. And finally, for Chaos, this is the trait choice that really defined the entire idea behind this build, and that is Prismatic Understanding. You increase your stealth duration by 50%, and while in stealth, you gain a boon every second. A random boon, that is. So you might have been able to glean or see just from the trait choice why I have taken Torch and Signet of Midnight. I want that stealth. I thought about taking Mass Invisibility. However, for PvP, I think Signet of Humility just kind of outwon Mass Invisibility just a little bit. So mostly I am trying to stay within stealth quite a lot. Of course, the minors have actually been very useful. Chaotic Persistence, Outgoing Boon, and Condition Damage or Condition Duration are increased for every boon. This is nice because we do gain a lot of boons from Chaos Storm, Lesser Chaos Storm, Auspicious Anguish, and staying in stealth for longer periods of time. And of course, Illusionary Membrane and Metaphysical Rejuvenation is really nice as well. Next, I have chosen Dueling for PvP. I always was very intimidated by dueling. However, using it now more, I've grown to really enjoy it. I've decided to take Desperate Decoy. A lot of people might not take Desperate Decoy. However, I like it because I want to focus on that stealth, and an additional cloned generation, if I can talk, isn't so bad, especially because we want to be using our shatters more often, and I'll get into the shatters as well. Next, Blinding Dissipation. Blind foes that are struck by a cry of frustration. Remember how I said we want to be shattering a lot? Yes, we're going to be wanting to use Cry of Frustration as much as we can, especially because we're playing into condition damage, but also because of Blinding Dissipation. Which also, to just explain, will blind foes. The confusion comes in with this next trait, Ineptitude. Ineptitude I actually very rarely take, and I now see that it is a very strong trait for condition damage. Interrupting a foe inflicts blind, and additionally blinding a foe inflicts confusion. So remember Blinding Dissipation, this will now apply confusion thanks to Ineptitude. If you don't take Ineptitude, you just get the blind off, which is still very strong. However, with this, your interrupts will now inflict blind. So not only do you want to be focusing Cry of Frustration, but you also want to be focusing in on Diversion. Diversion, if you interrupt someone, will now apply blind and confusion. Thank you to Blinding Dissipation and Ineptitude's synergy. So that was dueling. Yeah. Of course, you get some bleeding application, some vigor, and also some fury. And finally, we have illusions. I wanted to, I don't know. I think I just defaulted to illusions. You might be able to take another trait line. However, I've been having a lot of success with illusions. First off, your Cry of Frustration inflicts more stacks of confusion for an increased duration. Once again, really helps with Blinding Dissipation. Quite honestly, I think Cry of Pain is a little too powerful maybe for PvP. I don't think it necessarily needs to apply additional stacks in PvP. The duration increase seems powerful enough for a minor, but of course Mesmers have been plagued with nerfs, so I don't know, nerfing them more could see a lot of people be a little upset. For the Adept, I'm taking the Pledge. You reduce recharge on torch skills, and your flame bursts from torch skills inflict additional burning. The Pledge is really great so you can get into stealth that much more frequently. This is now a 24-second cooldown instead of a 30-second cooldown. So you're going to be getting a lot more stealth out of it. Next, I'm taking Escape Artist. When they changed this trait, I was like, who in their right mind is going to be taking this trait? Honestly, I think this could be a minor. Create a clone when you gain stealth. This Escape Artist could be a minor in the Chaos trait line. And I'm going to talk about this later on in the video, how I feel like stealth is integrated in the Mesmer. However, I've decided to take Escape Artist because it is actually very useful. Because I am taking Signet of Midnight and also taking the Prestige, I'm going to be able to generate 2 additional clones upon that activation. If I was taking Mass Invisibility, then I'd take a third, get a third clone generated. I also was thinking about taking Veil. I know, I was thinking about taking Veil. But you know what? It might not be that bad, but I don't know. I feel like it needs a little bit of love. I feel like glamours in general need to be touched up. And then finally, I'm taking Malicious Sorcery for the extra damage. This is mostly for the damage output and the faster cast times on Scepter. Before I go into the gameplay and talk about some of the clips that I'm going to be showing, I wanted to talk about a little bit on the stealth aspect of Mesmer. I think stealth is a bit weird because the stealth traits are scattered throughout. There isn't necessarily a specialization that focuses on stealth. Chaos's Grandmaster Prismatic Understanding is probably the strongest stealth trait for Mesmer. An Escape Artist, I feel like could honestly replace Chaos. The Chaotic Persistence. Chaotic Persistence could be a major trait in here. I don't know. Honestly, Chaotic Persistence seems more of like an inspiration in terms of boon and condition duration. I'm not too sure. Something just doesn't really fit right with me when it comes to stealth playstyles with the Mesmer. And honestly, I would like to see stealth maybe expanded and given a bit more love on the Mesmer and played with a bit more. But I digress. That's kind of just what I wanted to talk about a little bit. Because I was thinking about it last night, I was like, you know what? Stealth is kind of an interesting part about Mesmer, which might not receive too much love. But you know what? It's strong. And I just realized that the first word is not capitalized, and that is triggering. There we go. Next, we're going to be going over and showcasing some gameplay. So let's move over to the gameplay section. Welcome to this gameplay section. I'm just going to be basically commentating things that I see. So I start off up here, and then I realize that she's going to use her Sandshade, so I pop down. At first, I had a bit of a difficult time getting a target I was going to focus on. But then I saw this Renegade, and I knew that he had a lot of boons on him, so I wanted to try to focus him down. Maybe get a couple of Arcane Thieveries off of him. Sadly, I missed. But right now, I'm kind of just trying to see which target. And then I swap over to a lower health Scourge, trying to get him down. And then, once again, my teammates got the Renegade down, so we were sitting in a pretty good position here. Next up, the Scourge ended up going down. I got a nice interrupt off of the Torch Phantasm. Being able to distort and stealth really gives you a solid stomp, so that's nice. Here my teammate went down, and I decided I really needed to interrupt him in some way, and I knew that I had Signet of Humility, so I was like, you know what, we're gonna pop that, and it worked out pretty well. Thankfully he came up. Next is this little fight that I had with a Scourge. Granted, I did have one Ranger friend who was just shooting them from afar. However, this is somewhat of a, you know, focused duel between the Scourge and I, minus the Ranger. But just trying to focus on the interrupts as well. Using Arcane Thievery when there's 3 boons up on a target is really important. You can get away with 2 boons. You typically don't want to just steal 1. I have made that mistake, and it's not a great thing. Next, I'm coming over with this other Mesmer, this Mirage. This is where I really want to utilize stealth. I want to make sure that the Mirage, because they can dodge so many times and evade, I wanted to stealth as much as possible so that they wasted their abilities allowing me to free up room to start doing damage on them. Sadly, I also got Moed. I tried to escape, and I knew at this point that this wasn't working. So I humiliated the Weaver, and I needed to back out because his Ranger was doing a lot of damage. Great use of Blink. Whenever you need to. And then there were a bunch of enemies coming far. And I wanted to focus this ranger because I knew he was squishy because he was doing a lot of damage. Thankfully, he kept firing, even with multiple stacks of confusion on him. Staff phase retreat, I think the second skill, is great to get out of AoEs as well. And then we just kind of start poking away at him. I got ganked by the Mirage, so I needed to dip out. Thankfully, I managed to torch 4, and then my allies picked up some of the slack. This build is mostly a team fighter, though you can 1v1. If you get +1, so you're fighting 2 players, you end up having a really hard time. But ultimately, a really great team fighter because of AoE interrupts. Mostly when I play this build, I want to stay in stealth for at least 2 to 3 seconds so that I can get 2 to 3 boons. Here is an instance of a very focused Chaos Storm. Getting the interrupt off is very important because you blind and confuse them. I wanted to focus on this Ranger because I didn't want to give him free leeway, and the burning and confusion stacks really started to take a toll on him. Additionally, the Torment was nice because he was running away. And then just your basic distortion, stomp, nothing special. And then we just kind of continued on with this Necromancer. And then in the final instance, when we were actually going for Bell, this became very chaotic. Moed, the Ellie, getting a solid Moa off is really nice to just get a kill. You can probably get 3, maybe 4 Moas off in a Conquest game. And then the Renegade came back. Arcane Thievery, a couple of his boons off, transfer some conditions, and managed to get him down thanks to the Ranger. Teamwork is very important in PvP. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Subscribe, and bye!